oh God, what do I hope to get from this government?
Yeah.
This will be a catastrophic step backwards.
Britain is built on business. Businesses help generate the wealth which, as a country, we can then use to buy what we need. Be it food we eat with our salaries, or the NHS with our taxes. The business environment in a country will strongly influence the amount we are all paid, the amount of tax that is raised, and the cost of the things that we then spend our money on. So you would think that business would be absolutely central to the thinking of political parties in the lead up to election. Unfortunately, that doesn't appear to be the case this time. Politicians are not talking about business. There's also a strong sense that they're not listening to businesses. So we decided to travel the length and breadth of the country, speaking to businesses both big and small, to find out what they wanted from the Labour and Conservative parties. Unsurprisingly, Brexit is at the top of most people's agenda. Whether or not they are happy it is happening, almost all businesses are desperate to find out what it looks like so that they can plan accordingly.
I think there's two things that we want to see. The first is we want to see some certainty about where it is we're going with Brexit and the policies that we're going to have.
Without any kind of certainty, we can't prepare for what direction we go in. We don't have the capabilities to.
Certainty helps us plan, and that's essential for anyone trying to run a business.
And so the sooner we can get a level of certainty and move on within a sensible structured deal, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
We had to open a distribution center in the Netherlands in order to plan for eventualities of whatever a hard Brexit might look like. It's a temporary solution for us, though, and so an election that brings some certainty around policy about what are the ways in which we're going to operate across the borders allows us then to put a more permanent solution in place and gives everyone who works here some certainty about what their futures are and their roles. So I think it's essential that we have some clarity on which direction we're headed, whatever that is.
One big cause for uncertainty around Brexit is what is going to happen with immigration. Businesses are broadly speaking pro-immigration because it increases the talent pool from which they can recruit.
Building a global business, it's really important to attract talent.
Talent.
Access to talent.
Good access to talent is key.
One of our main concerns is, is the UK an attractive place for people to come?
Talent we don't just find in our local universities or local places, they're usually spread all over the world. So kind of continuing access to talent and continuing support of universities and research institutes to generate that talent.
On immigration policy, we're really looking for that fast track of life science talent, immigration policy to be implemented well. We're excited about that. We're dependent on really good talent.
I guess we'll have to see what happens and sort of what the rules and regulations are in the future, but certainly to date we've been able to attract good people, and hopefully we'll be able to maintain that in the future.
So what's the difference between the Labour and the Conservative approach to immigration? Labour's position on immigration changes frequently. Back in September, delegates at Labour's annual conference voted to support free movement and to extend it to non-EU countries. Some in the party are concerned how this will play in Brexit voting parts of the country. More recently, Labour has said its policies will be based on values rather than numbers, but it's very unclear what this actually means.
I want people to be able to be reunited with their families, and I want British people to be able to work across Europe as they are at the present time. And I think putting arbitrary figures on it, as successive governments have done, simply doesn't work.
The Conservatives have said they will end free movement, but have moved away from setting an arbitrary target on the number of people allowed into the country. Instead, they have promised an Australian-style points-based system, but details remain scant.
Immediately take back control of your immigration system, and that means that you'll be able to have an Australian-style points-based system. We will sort out our immigration system with a points-based Australian-style system.
Retail is the biggest single private sector employer in the UK. It too is concerned about hiring the right staff, but at the moment is even more concerned about just keeping the lights on.
Across the country, high streets are closing.
Retailers are concerned with what we know as the death of the high street.
Business rates are forcing shops to close.
Yet another business that goes into administration.
We've been hearing for the last 10 years about the death of the high street.
The high street, like everywhere else, is struggling.
The place is dead. I wouldn't like to run a shop in Port Talbot, relying on the people that come to Port Talbot, because it's a dead town.
we should have reduced business rates.
It seems very simple to us that if you were to make it more affordable for businesses to trade on the high street, they wouldn't be dying back so quickly.
Business rates can be justified if there's good things happening around it. But if those business rates are just pushing smaller businesses out that can't compete or can't afford that, then you're just going to end up with a very sort of strange, cloned high street of people that can afford it.
The local government is so stretched that our budgets are struggling, that the possibility of giving free car parking doesn't seem to be on the table. But that would clearly encourage people to come into our town centres.
What we need to see is the use of our money, the business rates, where that's going, what's happening to it. And we need to see clear positive outcomes from that money going away, you know, whether it's increase in trade or increase in car parks and things like that. The surrounding areas around our business, we need to see that our business rates are improving the quality of the town or city that we're in.
Business rates today are at their highest level since records began. That's because they are based on the value of the property in which the business operates, and property prices have been on a tear for years. This is a factor which many businesses argue is contributing to the so-called death of the high street. Labour has suggested taxing commercial landlords who own the properties instead of the businesses that rent them. But critics have suggested that this will lead to an increase in rents. The Conservatives have said they will extend the retail discount on business rates to 50% next year for those properties with a rateable value less than £51,000 and will launch a fundamental review of the system. This sounds a lot like a can being kicked down the road. Talk to business, and they also say they want to see what the money raised from business rates is spent on and to have some of it invested in policies that would help the high street to lure back shoppers. But it's not just about specific policies for specific sectors. More broadly, business would like to think that politicians are thinking long and hard about how to make the UK a better and easier place to set up and run a business. That requires a whole host of joined-up initiatives, sometimes labelled an industrial policy, that encompasses taxation, regulation, investment in infrastructure, and even planning to ensure there is enough housing for workers where it is needed most. There is little suggestion in either the Labour or the Conservative Party manifestos that those who aspire to run the country are thinking in these kind of terms.
The obsession with Brexit has taken us away from any dialogue about the importance of business, commerce and enterprise.
Because it's only through wealth being created that we're going to afford the public services. And I don't think we've heard anything from, or very much at all, from any of the parties on that yet.
There's been very little debate in the past 2 or 3 years since the 2016 vote to leave the EU about what the UK looks like in the post-EU world. What are our commercial priorities, our social priorities?
It's amazing how the debate seems to have been over the last few years all about the things that we don't want and not nearly enough about the things that we do.
Main priorities for us in South Wales or in Wales really is infrastructure spending.
The infrastructure plans that are in everyone's thinking at the moment, and we need that kind of long-term planning for a 10 to 20 year growth of an industry.
An attractive sort of fiscal policy, attractive tax environment, which is what we have here in the UK and we probably don't talk about enough. I think maintaining those things really important, very important to persuade those people who create jobs, create value in business to be able to do that in an environment where they're not going to get taxed punitively, because otherwise they'll leave this country.
Certainly here in Cambridge, everything is under stress as all of the elements of the town are growing very quickly, so we need transport, housing, and all the amenities that one needs to grow an economy around a business like ours.
I, like many people, have got more disillusioned with politics over the last few years, which I think is sort of sad.
I'm hoping that in this general election there's going to be some form of, I don't want to say truth, because famously.
I've never been less inspired politically, let me put it like that.
We're just going to go through years of more uncertainty.
So, the million-dollar question, who are business people planning to vote for?
I will be voting, I imagine, for Ben Bradshaw, who's our Labour MP, predominantly because I like him as a person. He's a good man, he has Exeter's best interests at heart. Personally,
I'm a supporter of the Conservatives and I believe Boris Johnson has got the right approach.
Is that all right?
Yeah, no, that's been really helpful. Thank you
Perfect.
so much.
That bit at the end, that's despair.